Hey there, viewers. Courtrooms are meant to keep emotions in check, but today that line shattered. During a tense hearing, the mother of one of Diddy's victims couldn't stay silent any longer, and what she did left the entire courtroom in chaos. Let's get into it. Chapter 1: The Long Walk-In. I don't remember waking up this morning. I just remember standing at the edge of my bed with my shoes already on, my fingers curled tight around the folder I hadn't opened in 3 months. It's faded now, not from time, but from handling. Oils from my skin, the faint rub of tears, the weight of prayer. You don't think paper can hold grief, but this one does. The line outside the courthouse curves around steel barricades and coffee carts, the air sticky and heavy with early summer tension. It's not hot yet, but the concrete is already warming. My coat clings to me in the wrong places, and my rosary beads keep catching on the corner of my sleeve. I shouldn't be here. I wasn't called to testify. I signed the form that said I wouldn't, but something told me last night. Something in the way the light hit the corner of my daughter's photograph on the dresser. That today, I needed to be inside, watching. The folder in my hand holds her affidavit. It holds the words she couldn't say out loud, not even to me. It holds her silence, her hospital forms, her journal pages I wasn't meant to read. It holds the last day she sang. I was a nurse for 27 years. I've seen body parts where they don't belong. I've held men's hands while they took their last breaths. But nothing prepared me for finding that notebook on the floor of my daughter's closet, stained at the edges and shaking in my hands like it was alive. She used to sing all the time, in the bath, while making sandwiches, even doing homework. That stopped after that night, after the ambulance. She doesn't sing anymore. I edge forward in the line. A man beside me complains about his ankle monitor. Another woman, maybe a reporter, eyes me like I might burst. They don't know me. They don't know her. But I see one familiar face ahead. A woman I recognize from the meetings, the anonymous ones. Her daughter tried to overdose twice after one of those parties. We nod, but we don't smile. There's nothing left to smile about today. Security is louder than I expected. Dogs sniffing bags, the beep of metal detectors, raised voices telling us to empty our pockets. I have nothing but the folder and the beads, and they want to see both. The guard is young, too young. He frowns when he sees the affidavit, his mouth tightening like he's about to say something human. But he doesn't. He just waves me through. My hands shake a little as I walk down the hall toward the courtroom. These shoes aren't good for standing. The floor is too clean, too polished. You can't scream in a place like this, not and be heard. There are people already seated inside. The air is dry, almost dusty. The benches are hard. No padding, no mercy. I pick the second row behind the rail, not close enough to touch, but close enough to see. I rest the folder in my lap, and it feels like it weighs 10 pounds. And I see him. He's already at the table, wearing something too smooth, too expensive, surrounded, not by guards, they sit further back, but by people who talk in quiet tones, tapping tablets and whispering behind legal pads. He doesn't look at them. He doesn't need to. He leans back like he's in a theater, like this is just another show. His mouth twitches upward for a second, not a smile exactly, but something smirking, and then his eyes sweep the gallery. They land on me. It's only a second, maybe less, but I know he recognizes me. I saw him once before, outside the hospital, late at night. He was in the back of a car, windows half-tinted, waiting while someone talked to police. I remember the way his head tilted, like I was a challenge, like I was still small enough to ignore. But today, I'm sitting here, I'm watching, and I brought her voice with me. In the row ahead of me, a boy draws something on a yellow pad. His hair's messy, his knees bouncing under the bench. I lean a little forward and see it. He's sketching the courtroom, lines sharp, shadows deep. And there, in the middle, Diddy's face, not as it looks, but how it feels. Cold, slightly warped, like something trying to imitate a man. To the left, I see a woman with a clipboard, maybe another survivor's mother. Her fingers tap a rhythm on her thigh. I count the beats. It matches a hymn I used to sing. Behind her, someone breathes too heavily. It's the kind of breath people make when they're trying not to cry. That's the sound the room is full of. Not screaming, not yelling, just that low, brittle breath. I clutch my beads. Each one passes through my fingers like a name. Our Lady of Sorrows, Our Lady of Justice, Our Lady of the Folded Hands. I whisper each one under my breath. The folder feels heavier, like it's pulsing. A guard near the wall shifts. He's tall, maybe ex-military, doesn't move much. But when Diddy glances toward the witness stand, just casually, like he's bored, the guard's hand twitches near his belt. Like something in the man makes people prepare for bad things. The judge isn't in yet. Some people are still filtering in. There's murmuring, whispers. Camera crews aren't allowed inside, but I can feel their eyes on the doors. The hall outside must be packed. This isn't just any case. This is him. The music, the parties, the rumors. People want a show, but this isn't a show for us. This is the only place we have left. I think about the time my daughter came home crying after cheerleading practice. Not the big kind of cry, just a quiet one. I made her tea. She wouldn't say what was wrong. Later, I found a note in her bag. It just said, "He said I'm next." I didn't understand it then. Now I do. The judge enters. Everyone rises. I rise slowly, like my bones aren't mine anymore. Like my knees forgot how to bend. The folder slides a little in my lap when I sit again, and I catch it with one hand. I can feel the words inside it. I can feel her. I think she's watching, maybe through me, maybe through this room, maybe through all of us sitting here, holding pieces of her story in folders and memories and broken hearts. The man at the table doesn't look nervous. He doesn't look afraid, but he doesn't look untouched either. I think something in him knows, not that he'll be found guilty, not that justice will come, but that he's not invisible anymore, that we saw him, that we remembered. I want to scream. I want to leap over the rail and slap the smirk off his face. I want to make him feel what my daughter felt. But I don't. I just sit there, holding the folder, holding my beads, holding my daughter's name inside my chest like a torch I'm too tired to carry, but too stubborn to put down. Today isn't about revenge. It's about remembrance. And this room remembers. Chapter 2. The courtroom knows. My hands don't shake anymore. They used to, years ago, when I was still new, still flinching at the first time someone cried on the stand or when a defense attorney dropped a folder too hard just to rattle the witness. But not anymore. I've been doing this for 28 years, 3 different courthouses, 2 of them federal. I've heard things that never made the news, and things I still hear in my dreams. I've typed the last words of a man before he was led away for life, and the first cries of a mother when her daughter described the unspeakable. I've seen celebrities, war criminals, white-collar demons, and broken families torn apart by what passes for justice in this country. But this trial, this one's different. There's something about this one. Even the air feels heavier. Today is day 3. The courtroom feels smaller than it did the first day. Not physically. No, but emotionally. Like each testimony is a new wall closing in. One by one, shrinking the space around everyone in it. It's not chaos. It's worse. It's a performance of order under the weight of something festering. I sit in my usual place, behind the desk that no one notices unless I stop. They never look at me, the lawyers. The judge glances at me from time to time, more of a nod, really, to confirm I'm still keeping up, still catching every pause, every hesitation, every word that might later be the difference between a guilty verdict and a mistrial. I catch everything. I always do. The door clicks open and the witness enters. A woman today. Mid-30s, plain clothes, no jewelry, no makeup. Her name was marked on the schedule as Lena, no last name, sealed for protection. But I've seen her face before. Not in person, not like this, but I remember it from the images they showed the jury on day one, the blurry surveillance still. The photo taken at a party where she stood near the edge of the frame like a ghost that wandered in by accident. She walks, slowly, deliberately, like her knees might give out if she moves too fast. She doesn't look at Diddy. Smart. Most of them don't. Not at first. I take a breath and position my fingers above the keys. The machine hums quietly under my hands. I don't even need to look at it anymore. My body knows the rhythm. It's like breathing now. The questioning starts simply. Her name, her background, how she came into contact with the accused. She answers like she's practiced this, like it's a script she's rehearsed in her head for years. But there's a tremble in the edge of her voice that even the microphone doesn't quite hide. I met him at a recording studio, she says. I was 22. I was trying to get my portfolio heard. I keep typing, I've heard this story before, not this version, not this exact woman, but I've heard this pattern. It always starts with a dream, music, film, fashion, some kind of light at the end of a tunnel, and the tunnel always leads to him. She talks about how she was invited to a party, how they told her to leave her phone at the door, how the mansion had safe rooms. A term I've learned means the opposite in these stories. She talks about the cameras, the contracts, the drink that tasted strange. Still, Diddy doesn't look at her. He's leaned back in his chair, resting his fingers along the edge of the table like he's conducting some invisible orchestra. He's not smirking today, but he's not crumbling either. He scribbled something now and then on a yellow notepad, his eyes blank. The judge watches him more than her. That's what strikes me most. Lena's voice cracks when she gets to the part about trying to leave. Bang. I told one of the guards I wasn't feeling well. I said I needed air. He smiled and told me to wait in the side room, that someone would escort me out. But when they came, they didn't take me to the door. My fingers type automatically. Each word lands like a bruise. She hesitates for a moment, looks down, then up again. Her mouth opens and then closes. The prosecutor urges her gently. It's a woman today. No names, just a voice. Calm, neutral. But I hear the tremor underneath. Lena swallows and tries again. There were 3 men in the room, she says. He wasn't one of them at first, but he came in later. They had cameras. I think it was supposed to look like a party video, like I was just drunk and having fun. But I wasn't. I said no, over and over. They laughed. Someone in the gallery lets out a short, sharp breath. A stifled cry. I glance up without moving my hands. It's one of the mothers, the one from the second row. Her name's Claudine, I think. I remember her from the incident with the folder. And Lena says it is. He told me, no one will believe you, not even your mother. And for a second, just one, I freeze. It's only a pause, barely noticeable in the transcript, but my fingers hover over the keys and my breath catches because that sentence, that line, I've heard it before, not in court, not officially, but whispered in waiting rooms, scribbled in survivor journals, printed in the corners of affidavits so stained with grief they practically bled. I glance up again. Claudine stands. Just a little. Not fully. Just a rise from the bench like her body reacted before her brain could stop it. Her hand clutches the side of the wooden seat. Her lips move. No sound. But her face looks like someone just tore the sky open and showed her hell. A security guard notices. He shifts, steps closer. She doesn't move any further though. She just locks eyes with Lena. And Lena, for the first time since taking the stand, smiles. Not a happy smile, a knowing one. A grateful one. A connection forged in shared devastation. Diddy doesn't. He keeps writing. I keep typing, but my hands feel heavier now, like each key is made of lead. Lena finishes her statement. There's more, but it's all technical now. Dates, locations, descriptions of rooms and furniture and voices. The kind of details that will be picked apart later by people who never cried over a daughter's broken hymen, who never scrubbed blood from tile floors after a party went wrong. The judge calls a brief recess. Lena is helped down from the stand, her steps wobbling slightly as she walks. She doesn't look back. Claudine sinks back into her seat, and I see her wiping her eyes with a handkerchief that looks like it was folded decades ago. No one says anything loud. Upper room says everything. You can pretend courtrooms are about procedure, about order, but the truth? The truth is that rooms absorb what's inside them. The wood remembers. The walls remember. The air thickens with truth until it can't be ignored anymore. And sometimes, the people who listen, the ones like me, we carry it with us. In our fingers, in the tape reels, in the keys. This room knows. And it's starting to breathe heavier. Chapter 3. The folder. The folder was waiting on the edge of my desk when I came in from the hallway. Beige, unassuming. A little bent at the corners like it had been carried too long in someone's hands. There was a note on top. Handwritten. Neat, but unpracticed. The kind of lettering that comes from someone who doesn't write much anymore but wanted to make this legible. To be reviewed in private. Given to Officer Rayner, 5/2. From Claudine H. I didn't need a last name. I knew who she was. I let the door swing shut behind me, pulled the blinds closed, and sat down in the creaking leather chair that hadn't been replaced since the building opened. The room was cold. Too cold for May, but the vent above my head always blasted Arctic air regardless of the season. It was better than the heat of the courtroom, though. Better than the eyes, the breathless gallery, the tension riding every syllable off that witness stand. I took a long breath, ran my fingers over the edge of the folder. Then I opened it. The first page was a medical record, dated 2015. A list of injuries. Bruising, cervical trauma, partial memory loss noted in intake. Below it, a printed photo. A girl's face blurred at the eyes, but the swelling was visible. There was a white scrunchie on her wrist and chipped pink polish on her nails. Under that, a stapled bundle of text messages. Screenshots printed onto white paper. The messages were jumbled, some time-stamped, some just fragments. One read, "Don't tell her, Mom. He said he'd kill you." Another, "I didn't say anything. I swear. Please don't bring them here again." Beneath that, a church counseling form. The counselor had initialed it, spoke with minor, indicates fear of retaliation, suggests sexual coercion, referred to external trauma specialist. I flipped further. There were more photos, one of a bruised forearm, another of a glittery dress crumpled on a tile floor, notes in the margins. Claudine's handwriting again. She said this was the dress she wore that night. I kept it in the attic. I didn't wash it. I closed the folder for a second and just sat there. Let the air blow past the back of my neck. Let the fluorescent light hume above me. Let the weight of this, all of this, sit. I wasn't supposed to be on this case originally. It was passed down after the first ADA bowed out. Too much media heat. The second had a conflict of interest, so it landed on me. I read the first complaint with a kind of cautious detachment. A lot of these celebrity cases came in bursts, noise, pressure, and then silence. But this time, the paperwork didn't disappear. What I found was a trail. A deliberate, ugly, buried one. Non-disclosure agreements wrapped in layers of shell companies, payments disguised as consulting contracts, real estate deeds transferred, then retroactively wiped from record with quiet internal notaries. The girls? Many had vanished from the system. Some moved states, others changed names. A few never filed anything, just hospital visits, disconnected school records, dropout dates that lined up too neatly with tour stops and VIP events. And Diddy's people, they didn't just defend, they maneuvered. Legal chess on a board most victims never even saw. They exploited jurisdictional gaps, sealed their own depositions, filed endless motions to delay or dismiss. Every move was technical, precise, cold. But this folder, this was different. This wasn't filed through an attorney. This wasn't stamped or notarized or scrubbed for liability. This was a mother's record of what her daughter wouldn't say out loud. Near the back was a cassette. Actual magnetic tape. Black plastic with a tiny white sticker on the spine. March 2. Basement room. She wanted this saved. I still kept an old player in the office. Don't ask me why. Some part of me never quite trusted the cloud. I popped it in and hit play. At first, static. A low hum. The rustle of fabric, like someone holding the recorder under their shirt. Then, a voice. Faint. Almost a whisper. They made me play the game again. This time there were more people watching. He said I was his favorite. I didn't want to be his favorite. The sound cut out for a second. More rustling. A door opens. Then a man's voice, distant but clear. Put the mask back on. We're not done. The girl again, crying this time. If I scream, they laugh. If I go quiet, they say I like it. I don't know what else to do. I stopped the tape. Not because I couldn't listen, but because I'd heard enough. Somewhere in that building, the defense was probably writing up another motion to delay, another technicality, another smokescreen. But this wasn't going away. I pulled out a legal pad, began drafting language for an emergency witness amendment. We needed Claudine on record, even if it was limited, even if only to authenticate the materials. I could already hear the objections coming. Unvetted, hearsay, unfair prejudice. But this wasn't about court theatrics anymore. This was evidence. This was human. Still, a doubt lingered. What if putting Claudine on the stand hurt us? She wasn't polished. She wasn't young. She didn't have media training or clean sound bites. She had grief, raw, bleeding, and pointed directly at the man sitting smug behind that polished defense table. Could that backfire? Could she snap? Could the jury see her pain and think it was bias, not truth? But then I remembered the folder, the edges worn, the tape labeled in a young girl's handwriting, the scrunchie in the photo, the silence of that voice on the recording, the kind of silence that doesn't scream but lingers decades later. Sometimes a witness doesn't speak for victory. They speak because no one else did. This folder didn't come with a legal team. It came with a mother's broken hands. And in them, more truth than the whole damn courtroom wanted to hear. Chapter 4. The Cough. I've worked this courthouse for 18 years. Long enough to know when a room gets ready to snap. And it's not always loud. Not always chairs flying or people screaming. Most times it starts quiet. It starts in the stillness. Something too still, too tense. Like the whole place is holding its breath. That's when you know something's about to go wrong. Day 4, I was stationed near the back left side of the courtroom, seated but alert. That's where they always place us when the high-profile cases come in. This one was worse than most, the kind where the air feels thick before anyone says a word. The kind where victims sit like statues and the accused wears a suit like armor, even when the words being said should be enough to burn the skin off his back. I had my eyes sweeping the gallery the whole time. That's my job, not the lawyers, not the judge, not even the guy on the stand. My job is the room, the crowd, the people not being looked at. Because that's where the real heat builds, where pain simmers, where grief stirs, where the pressure cooks so long you don't hear it until it breaks open. He was on the stand that morning, the witness, a man in his late 40s, short, trimmed beard, stiff collar. His name wasn't published, but I recognized the type. Ex-military, worked security at one of Diddy's private homes. I knew the posture, back straight, hands still, eyes forward. But his voice? That voice had a quake in it he couldn't iron out. He was talking about the layout of the mansion, how there were different levels of clearance. Coded doors, he said, not just keypads, palm scanners, facial recognition in some wings. The jury looked confused, some of them jotting notes, others just blinking. But me? I was watching her. Claudine, second row, far right, always in the same seat. She hadn't moved since day 1. I'd seen her cry once. Silent, the kind of crying that doesn't move your face but soaks your collarbone. Today, though, she was still. Stiff, too stiff. The security witness hesitated when he said the phrase, red mode. That got my attention. "What is red mode?" the prosecutor asked. The man on the stand looked down, cleared his throat. "It was a setting," he said. "It activated when VIP guests were present, certain doors locked automatically. Surveillance systems adjusted, curtains closed." He paused, and staff had to wear specific clothing, red bracelets. "That's when it happened." Claudine coughed. Not a gentle one, not from a cold. This was sharp, violent, like her body couldn't keep something in anymore. Then something dropped, a dull clatter on the floor. Metal, not a phone, not keys, something smaller, denser. Every head didn't turn, but mine did. I stood, slow, not enough to draw attention from the bench, but enough to give me a better angle. She was bent slightly, reaching down to retrieve the object. When she came back up, her hand didn't return to her lap. It went inside her coat. That was enough for me. I touched my radio, shoulder mic, and pressed the button twice. No words, just a soft double click. A signal. Backup requested. Non-emergency. Yet, I didn't want to escalate without reason. She wasn't armed. I hadn't seen a weapon. But there was something in the set of her jaw, in the way her eyes never blinked as she stared forward. And then, for the first time that day, Diddy looked at her. He turned, just a little, casual, like checking a watch. But when his eyes met hers, I saw it. A flinch. Small, barely visible, but there. Like a man catching a shadow in the corner of a room he thought he locked. Claudine didn't move. She just held her gaze, her hand still inside her coat, the object, whatever it was, hidden again. The courtroom didn't react, not out loud, but I felt it. The air shifted. The assistant at the prosecution table typed something and dropped her pen. The clatter made a few heads twitch. Someone in the gallery whispered a prayer. I couldn't hear the words, but I know the sound. It's the sound of desperation, of trying to hold something in that doesn't want to be held anymore. The judge didn't notice, or pretended not to. The defense stayed composed, always do. They're trained for that. But I saw one of the guards near the entrance glance at me, hand hovering near his own radio. We were tuned now. All of us who know how to watch a room. I stayed standing, shifted slightly so I could keep Claudine in the corner of my vision while watching the bench. The witness continued. He spoke about rooms with no cameras. Entertainment rooms, he said. Ones where guests weren't allowed without specific instructions. Ones where staff were told to wait outside no matter what they heard. He didn't say what happened in those rooms. Didn't have to. We all felt it. Claudine finally looked down. Just a moment. Her hand still didn't leave the coat, but the line of her shoulders dropped a hair, like she'd decided something. Or maybe stopped deciding. I felt a chill go through me then, and not from the AC. I thought about my daughters. One just started college, the other still in high school. Both of them, loud, fierce, confident. I raised them to be that way. But watching Claudine, I thought about what happens when no one listens, when confidence breaks under the weight of something too dark to name. And I thought, even a uniform doesn't protect them from this. Even the badge on my chest couldn't stop what had already happened to girls like her daughter. Couldn't reverse it, couldn't erase it. My job is to keep order. But in that moment I realized, some things can't be ordered. Some things are bigger than the room they happen in. I tapped my radio again. One click. Then held it. Unit 2, I said quietly. Watch second row right, mother of Jane Doe 2. Hands still inside coat, no action taken yet, just eyes up. A quiet click in reply. Understood. The courtroom kept moving. The testimony kept going. But the pulse in the room was pounding now. You couldn't hear it in the air, but you could feel it. Claudine exhaled softly, and Diddy turned back toward the bench, the mask back on, the flinch gone. I saw it, and so did she. This wasn't just testimony anymore. This was a warning. From her, from the folder she carried, from the cough that broke the silence. The room hadn't erupted yet. But what? I'd be here when it did. Chapter 5, Impact Statement. The courthouse restroom smelled like bleach and nerves. I stood in front of the mirror, both hands pressed against the cold porcelain sink, trying to breathe like they taught us in those grief support meetings. In through the nose, out through the mouth. But nothing was moving right. My chest was too tight, my throat too dry. The lights above buzzed softly, flickering just enough to make the room feel unstable, like it wasn't built for someone like me to linger in. I hadn't planned to come in here. I was supposed to stay seated during the break. Quiet, composed, dignified. That's what the officer told me when he handed me the notice that I wasn't going to be put on the stand. "We appreciate your cooperation, Ms. H," he'd said. Like I was a flight delay, a polite inconvenience. They said the court had what it needed, that the testimony so far was strong, that pushing too hard might hurt the case, that my daughter's affidavit, the one she barely whispered into existence from behind her locked bedroom door, would speak loudly enough. But they were wrong. I stared at myself in the mirror, My reflection looked older than I felt, the kind of age that grief carves, not time. My eyes were rimmed in red, my shoulders sloped forward like I'd been carrying something heavy for too long, and I had. Around my neck, the rosary beads shifted. I reached for them, felt them slip between my fingers, cool and worn smooth. I closed my eyes and tried to recite the prayer. Hail Mary, full of grace. And then they broke. The string snapped like a violin under too much pressure. Beads scattered across the floor, bouncing under stalls, rolling like marbles with purpose. The sound was louder than it should have been, too loud for a room this small. I didn't move. I just watched the chain fall apart in my hand, a limp thread and a crucifix dangling like a failed lifeline. I knelt, picked up what I could. 3 beads, 5. The rest were gone, swallowed by tile and plumbing and time. I sat back against the wall for a minute and closed my eyes again. I whispered it this time. Not the Hail Mary, not the Lord's Prayer. It's a statement, the one I wasn't allowed to give. My name is Claudine, I murmured, barely audible above the hum of the light. And my daughter was 17 when she met him. He told her she was beautiful, that he'd make her famous, that he liked girls with spark. I could see her in my mind, red ribbon in her hair, holding a bottle of cheap body spray and twirling in front of the mirror, humming to herself. That's how she used to greet the world, singing. You had invited her to a party, I continued, told her to dress up, told her she could bring a friend, but only if the friend was cute too. She went alone. She didn't tell me because she thought I'd say no, because she thought he was a once-in-a-lifetime chance. I swallowed. She came back, quiet, eyes swollen, lip bleeding. I asked her what happened. She said she couldn't remember, but I knew. I saw the fear in her body, the stiffness when she walked, the way she flinched when I reached to hug her. There was a bracelet missing, the one I'd given her for her birthday with our initials engraved inside. She wore it everywhere, except after that night. I reported it. The hospital took notes. They logged the injuries, but the detective looked at me like I was the problem. Any chance she was drinking? He'd asked. Do you think maybe she's confused about what happened? Confused. As if trauma was a fog she wandered into and not a blade pressed against her throat. I pressed my forehead to my knees, crouched on the floor of the courthouse restroom like a woman praying for permission. But I wasn't asking anymore. I wasn't hoping. I wasn't begging. I was deciding. They didn't want me to speak. They thought her affidavit was enough. They thought the tape would carry the weight. They thought the witnesses could stitch together a picture clean enough for the jury to recognize. But they don't know what I know. They didn't feel the cold in my daughter's hands when I found her locked in her room with the windows open in January. They didn't read the note she left on her pillow the night she disappeared for 3 days. It never stops, even when I sleep. She refused to testify, said it was too dangerous, said she didn't want to be hunted again. I didn't blame her. I still don't. But if she couldn't speak, then someone had to. I stood up slowly, brushing myself off. My knees cracked. My back ached. My body betrayed my age, but my mind was sharper than it had ever been. Rage does that. Grief does that. I walked to the sink, rinsed my hands, looked at my face again. I didn't look like someone who could make an impact, but that's what they never expect. From the inside pocket of my coat, I pulled out a small pendant, stainless steel, flat, inscribed with the date she was released from the hospital. It used to hang from her IV bag. A nurse gave it to her as a keepsake. To remind you survived, the woman had said. I didn't know she'd kept it until I found it folded into a pair of socks last year. I slipped it under my sleeve, where the rosary beads used to rest. The court officer's voice echoed faintly from the hallway. Session resuming in 5 minutes. I dried my hands, adjusted my collar, looked into the mirror one last time. I don't care what they say, I whispered. Let them take me out. Let them drag me if they have to. I pressed my palm against the mirror, not for balance, but like I was trying to pass through it. But he's gonna hear me before they do. The break. The courtroom had grown used to quiet. 4 days of testimony had carved out a rhythm of control. The whisper of shuffled papers, the clack of heels on linoleum, the tap of keys beneath the court stenographer's desk. Even the sobs that sometimes escaped the gallery had learned their place, muffled quickly by trembling hands or swallowed back into trembling throats. It wasn't calm. It was containment, and everyone inside, from the guards at the wall to the jurors in their assigned rows, had started to believe that this controlled quiet was a kind of progress. But silence is a lie when it's held together by pressure, and pressure eventually ruptures. She took the stand slowly, this new witness. Her hands trembled just enough to be noticeable, not from nerves but from history. She wore a beige blouse, loose at the sleeves, and a black skirt that clung too tightly at the waist, a single silver cross around her neck. She was a former housekeeper. No cameras were rolling, no reporters were allowed inside, but something about her presence pulled every eye forward. She didn't give her name at first. The judge allowed anonymity for certain testimonies. But the moment she began speaking, the walls of the courtroom seemed to lean inward, hungry for the words no one had dared say so plainly. There were masks, she said softly. Not for illness, not for theme, just masks. The prosecutor asked her to elaborate. They would arrive in cars without plates, sometimes in pairs, always quiet. Girls, boys, some looked young. Too young. They didn't speak much. She hesitated. Inside, there were doors we weren't allowed to open, rooms that locked from the outside. Music played loud enough that you couldn't hear things unless you pressed your ear to the vents. A woman in the gallery shifted. A cough escaped her, sharp but quickly covered. The housekeeper continued. There were nights labeled red mode. That's what the staff called it. We weren't supposed to make eye contact with guests. Our phones were taken. We signed new agreements each time. She lifted a trembling hand and pulled a folded document from her purse. This is one of the contracts. It has the wrong date. I didn't notice it at the time. On the bench, the judge leaned slightly forward. At the defense table, Diddy remained still, but his hand, resting on the edge of his notepad, twitched. The housekeeper looked straight ahead. All night I saw a girl trying to leave through the kitchen. She was barefoot. Her makeup was smudged. She asked me where the bathroom was, but I knew she just wanted a way out. I opened the service exit. Before she could step out, one of the men came in and pulled her back. Gasps rose like wind through the gallery. The judge lifted a hand, signaling quiet. The bailiffs shifted. But Claudine was already rising. She didn't shout, not at first. She just stood, slow, deliberate. Her coat fell open slightly, revealing the edge of the folder she'd carried since the first day. The housekeeper looked at her, only for a moment. And then Claudine spoke, loud. How dare you look away? You watch them die inside. Her voice cracked like a rifle shot. The judge slammed a gavel. Ma'am, you are out of order. But it was too late. Everything broke open. Claudine stepped over the gallery barrier before the nearest guard could react. Her hands moved fast, not for a weapon, not for violence, but for the folder. She pulled it from her coat, pages spilling loose in her fingers like feathers ripped from a pillow. Testimony, photographs, the tape. The room erupted. One juror stood instinctively, another shrank in his seat. The prosecutor shouted. A defense team member knocked over a water glass, reaching for their notes. It crashed against the floor. Diddy turned, visibly startled, and his chair tipped backward, the legs skidding out with a squeal. He caught himself, barely, and looked up just as Claudine was at the table. She didn't hit him. She didn't scream obscenities. She just held the folder up with shaking hands and hurled it at his chest. Papers flew. The folder bounced off his shoulder and landed across the table, scattering forms and photographs across the polished wood. "That's hers," she cried. "That's the girl you said would forget." A beat of silence. Just one, long enough for everyone to absorb what had happened. Then the officers were on her. Two grabbed her arms. One reached for the papers, another shielded the judge. Claudine didn't fight, she sobbed. Not the soft sob of a polite courtroom, but the ragged animal sound of someone who has kept too much inside for too long. And Diddy? He blinked. Not slowly, not calmly, but rapidly, like someone waking up. Like a man who had always believed he'd never have to hear those words said out loud to his face. The court reporter sat frozen. The jury didn't move. The housekeeper on the stand lowered her eyes. And in the back corner of the courtroom, a bead from a broken rosary rolled across the floor, hitting the base of a chair with a tiny, final click. The courtroom, once silent out of discipline, had become silent out of something else now. Your recognition. No more pretending. No more performance. Just truth. And the sound of one mother's breath, broken, echoing beneath the stained wooden beams. Chapter 7. Sealed and stamped. The archive room was cold, fluorescent, and smelled faintly of toner ink and glue. It was the kind of place built for paper to survive, not people. Even the walls were padded, sound-dampening panels that kept secrets from echoing too far. Tess had worked in a lot of back rooms in her 5 years assisting the defense, but this one made her skin itch every time she walked in. Too quiet, too sterile. It never felt like a place to find answers, only things people hoped would never be read again. She was sent down an hour after the outburst, not with urgency, not exactly, but with purpose. Instructions were clear. Pull everything related to the folder the woman Claudine had thrown at Diddy's chest. Review for contamination, improper handling, anything that might be grounds for suppression. Suppress, delay, redirect. Tess had learned early on that that's how it worked here. But today felt different. The folder had been swept off the courtroom floor and into a sealed envelope within minutes. No reporters saw what was inside. No camera caught the fluttering pages. But everyone in that room had felt it. And Tess, for reasons she didn't fully understand, wanted to know what it was. She slid the document box onto the metal table, peeled back the tape and opened the flaps like she was unwrapping something she wasn't supposed to touch. Inside, a stack of legal paper, some yellowed with age, others pristine, printed on recent firm letterhead. But halfway down the pile, there it was, the folder. Dated beige, the spine cracked, corners bent, and on the front, in blue pen, JH, archive/confidential. She slipped on gloves, not for fingerprints, for separation. Emotional, mental, legal, all of it. The first thing she noticed? The weight. The folder was heavier than a normal submission. Too many layers. She opened it and froze. The first page was a notarized statement, dated 2015, signed by someone she didn't recognize. Stamped twice. Once by a notary, once by a church. She leaned closer. JH affirmed the events that took place between January 15th and January 17th, 2015, at the private residence of SC in Beverly Hills. She stopped reading aloud. She knew what this was, and she knew why it hadn't been brought forward sooner. It was unfiltered, not rewritten by counsel, not cleaned up for a jury, just a girl's raw memory, recorded in formal ink. She turned the page. Photographs, 4, maybe 5, clipped together. One caught her eye instantly. A stuffed animal, a pink bear with matted fur, perched on the edge of a marble bathtub. Inside the tub, a bracelet floated in several inches of cloudy water, the same kind that hospitals use to calm bruises, the kind they tell mothers is standard. The bracelet was engraved, barely legible, but she tilted the photo to catch the light. One side read, "To J-Love always, Mom." Tess blinked hard. Something about the image, the tub, the toy, the careless way the bracelet floated there like nothing had happened, made her stomach knot. She read more. Counseling notes. One document with red underlining. Subject associates when asked about specific rooms, references games that required silence, masks, and performance. The legal team upstairs would pick it all apart. They'd find inconsistencies, challenge timelines, argue contamination of evidence, standard protocol. Tess had helped with that process before. But now, she didn't want to. She didn't want to be part of whatever machine took this folder and turned it into strategy. For a moment, she just stared at the pages, the photos, the initials, the edges where Claudine had written tiny notes. This was the birthday dress. She hid this under the bed. Why did no one ask about this? And then she did something she wasn't supposed to. She pulled her phone from her pocket. No cameras allowed in the archive room, but no one checked. She didn't take pictures. That would be too risky. She opened her email, addressed it to her personal account. Subject line, "In case this disappears." She typed a note. Photocopy coming via scan. Archive, Claudine H. J.H. Folder, CPGS 38. Original materials not redacted. Then she walked to the side scanner, fed the selected pages through, and uploaded the copy. She didn't know why. She wasn't a whistleblower. She wasn't even brave. But something in her gut, in the way Diddy hadn't even flinched when the folder hit his chest, told her. They'll try to bury this again. And maybe, just maybe, if it's floating out there, even anonymously, it can't be buried quite so deep. She resealed the folder, placed it back in the evidence box, and marked it with a fresh tag. Reviewed, stamped, returned. As she walked out, her hands shaking slightly, her phone buzzed. Just a junk notification, nothing urgent. But her heart was pounding like she'd set something in motion she couldn't take back. Upstairs, reporters were already gathering. Talking heads trying to summarize what happened when the mother threw the folder. Some called it a breakdown. Some called it a security incident. One said it was a protest. But none of them saw what mattered. Not the documents, not the photos, not even the bracelet. What mattered was the room, the feel of it. The way the air had shifted when truth, heavy and shaking, landed like a slap on a man who had spent decades dodging consequence. And Tess knew, deep in her chest, that even if the trial dragged on for months, that moment would be the one that lasted. Chapter 8. The Room Remembers. The courtroom sits quiet now, not just empty, hollow. The air is thick with what was said here and what wasn't. The walls, scrubbed down and polished after the outburst, still seem to pulse with it, a tension that bleach can't remove. The windows don't open in this part of the courthouse. The light doesn't change much either. It's sterile, intentional, a place designed to process pain into something palatable. But some things won't file away. It's been weeks since the hearing where Claudine's voice cracked the quiet wide open, since the folder spilled across the table like a wound torn open, since the papers were gathered and sealed again. She hasn't been allowed back inside. The order came quietly, wrapped in polite terms: security concern, interference with procedure. Pending review. She doesn't fight it. She waits for her contempt hearing, for the world to notice what she forced into the light. But she doesn't wait with regret. Her daughter never testified, not publicly, not on record. But something shifted anyway. That sealed incident from 2015, the one buried beneath layers of insufficient evidence and lack of cooperation, is back on the docket, re-examined, reconsidered. Not because of new evidence, but because people finally looked. The folder triggered a domino. Requests for discovery accelerated. 2 additional victims came forward. Another housekeeper anonymously submitted a sworn affidavit. The defense has grown quieter with each passing day. What used to be smug efficiency has started to look more like scrambling. Their delays are transparent now. The polished calm is cracking at the edges. Diddy hasn't returned to court since the incident. A medical excuse, but no one believes it. The judge hasn't spoken of Claudine publicly, not in statements, not in rulings. But late one night, after the last gavel strike of a long procedural session, a letter was left in the judge's private inbox, and written, folded twice. Though return address. The clerk logged it as unauthorized correspondence, but the judge opened it anyway. There were no threats, no demands, just a single paragraph, penned in small, careful script. I know you are bound by process. I know your hands are tied in ways mine are not. I do not ask for mercy. I do not ask for punishment. I ask only that my daughter be seen, not as a name in sealed evidence, but as a girl who loved to sing before someone told her silence was safer. Thank you for letting me say what she couldn't. The judge did not respond, but the letter was not discarded. It was placed in a drawer, tucked beneath a paperweight. Some things aren't filed because they aren't meant to be closed. And still, the REM remembers. The chair where Claudine sat is slightly bent now. The wood cracked when she pushed herself forward. The floor scuffed near the defense table, where she collided with it. A single rosary bead, long missed by the janitorial crew, rests beneath the second row of the gallery bench. Smooth, black, heavy with something that can't be polished away. Upstairs, in press rooms and legal offices, the noise continues. Analysts debate what comes next. Will the case collapse under too many moving parts? Will Diddy's team push for a private settlement? Will the federal charges stick? The noise is constant, but the courtroom is still, and that stillness says more. Because no matter how loud the world gets, the place where the truth was finally spoken remembers, on the way people do, in the way spaces do, in the way silence does. And Claudine? She walks now with less urgency. She doesn't chase headlines, doesn't call her attorney twice a day anymore. She knows the machine moves on its own clock. She knows what she did. And she knows that sometimes what you say is less important than who you make look at it. She walks down the sidewalk at dusk, no one around her, no cameras, no microphones. The trial buzz has moved elsewhere. She passes shuttered storefronts and cracked pavement. Lights flicker on in second-floor windows where dinners are being warmed and babies are being bathed. The city doesn't pause for justice. It keeps eating. But she walks steady. In her hand, clutched tight, is a folded photograph. Old, creased, the image slightly faded. Her daughter, younger, singing into a hairbrush, mid-laugh, light in her eyes. The time before. Claudine doesn't need the trial to end in a headline. She doesn't need the courtroom to thank her. She just needed to be heard. And now she has been... Yes, courtrooms forget. But the walls don't. Neither do the mothers.